but because they are hard.
I know. The whole world's watching you. I'm going over.
Chopper away.
That you have written evidence that goes against human elevation or evolution is reported only by crackpots.
Now this is one of the standard techniques that the scientific community tries to use against anybody that reports something that goes against their ideas. They try to label them in a derogatory way without actually discussing the facts.
The worst thing to call somebody is crazy, is dismissive. I don't understand this person, so they're crazy. That's bullshit. These people are not crazy, they're strong people. Maybe the environment is a little sick.
There are people who believe that they have a God-given right to rule over others. They believe that their outward appearance is superior to all others. They harbor selfish ambitions to be rich and to have power over what they describe as common people. They lie, cheat, steal, strangle, stab and slash their way to power. They believe that their actual willpower, what the British occultist Aleister Crowley described as the will of Thelema, the royal will, must be obeyed.
Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win.
The conspiratorial view of history is the correct view of history. Conspiracy to grab property, conspiracy to make illegal profits, and conspiracy to assassinate has been the driving force behind the royal political elite for thousands of years.
It is the world that has been pulled over your eyes to blind you from the truth.
He should be well punished for his sins.
What truth?
The punishment prescribed by law is terrible indeed. If the executioner takes care to exact the extremity of pain.
He is no ordinary traitor. Tell Richard Topcliffe to create some new device.
The so-called royal family which triumphed is basically German. They are seated on almost every throne in Europe. They are the Saxe-Coburg-Gotha-Battenberg bloodline, which often intermarries with the Hesse-Kassel German nobility and claim Jewish descent from the royal house of David in ancient Israel.
Some group that we should know what they're doing because they are so influential, and when they enter into private or secret or unwritten agreements among themselves as to what they're going to do to influence politics and influence banking, they in fact do influence politics and banking on the basis of the agreements made at this hotel in Switzerland, Nicole?
See you dinner at Boulay. That's where they'll be talking about this, right?
Who are they? Who are they?
Oh, they're CEOs, they're former CEOs, they're former politicians.
The former chairs of the Fed.
Look,
they're David
There's
Rockefeller.
a few heads of royal families.
Yeah, okay, there might be good ideas that come out of this. Why not share knowledge?
Okay.
Why not build relationships that at some point in time might be able to help you?
Hang on, Nicole. The Queen of Spain, John D. Rockefeller, Google CEO Eric Schmidt, former United States President, which one will be there? Bill Clinton.
Let me tell you something. I'll tell you a couple of stories about fraud. The Bohemian Club, as you say, the Bohemian Club, that's where all those rich Republicans go up and stand naked against redwood trees, right? I've never been to the Bohemian Club, but you ought to go. It'd be good for you. Get some fresh air. Thousands of government-sponsored experiments did take place at hospitals, universities, and military bases around our nation. The goal was to understand the effects of radiation exposure on the human body. While most of the tests were ethical by any standards, some were unethical, not only by today's standards, but by the standards of the time in which they were conducted. In too many cases, informed consent was withheld. Americans were kept in the dark about the effects of what was being done to them. The deception extended beyond the test subjects themselves to encompass their families and the American people as a whole. For these experiments were kept secret.
What have Herbert Hoover, Art Linkletter, Jack London, and Richard Nixon all had in common? Well, they've all been members of the exclusive all-male Bohemian Club in California, where every year at this time, the elite from around the country get together for 2.5 weeks of fun and games. Steve Shepard has this special assignment report.
More than 2,000 members of San Francisco's exclusive and all-male Bohemian Club have once again descended on Northern California. These men will spend most of the month of July encamped on some 2,700 acres of pristine and privately owned redwood forest. Forest very much like this. The place is called Bohemian Grove, and it's located just 80 miles north of San Francisco. The Grove is the Bohemian Club's summer retreat, and its facilities are hidden beneath lush forest canopy extending south from the banks of Sonoma County's Russian River. For more than a century, the camp has been a place where club members and guests from all across America gather to relax. The retreat is divided into dozens of small camps, the most prominent of which is called Mandalay. Among its members are businessmen like Leonard Firestone and Edgar Kaiser, and political figures like Gerald Ford, Henry Kissinger, William French Smith, and George Shultz. President Reagan, Vice President Bush, and Defense Secretary Weinberger are members of other camps. Richard Nixon is a Bohemian, and so are high-ranking executives of such companies as Eastern Airlines, Standard Oil of Indiana, and Bank of America. For the most part, the men of Bohemian Grove are over 50, highly successful, and, according to many employees, politically conservative.
Once again! Now but these slain, which hither ye have brought from regions where I reign, ye fools and priests.
They raise their children without love or compassion, breeding each successive generation to be at the head of a military establishment who keep an angered peace by use of fear, surveillance, and war. Contrary to what the royal spin doctors have written in the school history books, Queen Victoria was not popular. She was often hissed in public, and there were no less than 7 attempts to kill her. Keeping the populace ignorant, using adults and children alike as virtual slaves in workhouses, providing no adequate protection against hypothermia, working every man and woman to exhaustion and imposing a crippling poll tax was the modus operandi of Queen Victoria and all her relatives sitting on the thrones across Europe. So-called Victorian values allowed children to be used as slave labor.
The day when we shall know exactly what electricity is will chronicle an event probably greater, more important than any other recorded in the history of the human race. Then it will be a mere question of time when men will succeed in attaching their machinery to the very wheel work of nature. See the excitement coming.
Right now we have the entrenched energy monopolies and cartels. You know, we have OPEC and we have the 7 sister oil companies that control all the oil and energy. But what people have to understand is that the people who run the energy business in this world, which is the biggest business on the planet, turning over $4 to $5 trillion a year, it's bigger than guns and drugs, it's bigger than defense. They control the newspapers, they control the governments. But these companies are so big that they regulate the government, which regulates them.
It's not free. Nothing is free. But cheap and efficient energy exchange is a viable concept.
Now I say that everything in this universe is free energy. It's been dreamed of for hundreds of years that somewhere, someplace, as Tesla said, man will hook his machinery to the very wheelwork which drives the universe itself.
In the sky caused her to pull over.
Strange, like the lights were pulsating on it.
I told you they'd be back.
What are they doing?
Knew that it wasn't moving at all. So we're like, no, that can't be an airplane.
What about this? What is this? That's mad, babes. It's moving, changing into shapes.
Yeah.
You see that?
Yeah.
Boy, zoom in a bit more.
I can't.
The history of science is the history of the suppression of great inventions. A few classic stories. Nikola Tesla.
Nikola Tesla is regarded as the founding father of free energy. His astounding developments in the generation of alternating electrical current are still being used today. His most notorious project involved the transmission of wireless electricity into the atmosphere, which allowed for unlimited power to be freely accessed by everyone. When his financial backer, J.P. Morgan, realized that this power system could not be metered, all funding was immediately withdrawn. Tesla's electrical broadcast towers were dismantled, and through Morgan's many close connections with the media and government, Tesla's career was destroyed. In 1977, Bruce De Palma unveiled the first prototype of the N machine, an electrical generator which uses rotating magnets to generate up to 5 times more power than it takes to drive it.
I know about the fact that the Japanese government and the Indian government have ongoing projects to produce N machines for domestic power.
Sen görüyor musun?
Gördüm.
Nasıl bir şey bu ya? He?
Felaket.
Abi erken çıktılar. 2:20 geçiyor saat.
Saat 20 olmaz ki ya.
Ha? Abi bu manyak bir şey ya. Bunda işi ilk defa parlak. Aha.
My partner is Paramahamsa Tiwari, who is the director of the Nuclear Power Corporation of India, which operates all the nuclear plants in India.
In late 70s, I learned from Bruce De Palma that he had carried out certain crucial experiments by rotating electromagnets.
Tiwari tested a prototype based on De Palma's N machine under laboratory conditions. The results were deemed too impressive, causing disbelief and suspicion among conservative government officials and the power consortiums that backed the project. Tiwari was forced to abandon the project completely.
It's a major breakthrough that will no doubt make motorists happy, and as Ralph Robinson explains, the Pentagon is also showing lots of interest in this project.
U.S. inventor Stan Myers released his water-powered car engine in 1988.
The Pentagon flew a lieutenant colonel in last week to look at Myers' invention. There's talk of possibly using it in the Star Wars defense program and to run Army things.
Myers found it virtually impossible to secure financial backing after certain Pentagon officials paid him a visit. A number of similar inventions were developed and tested all around the world.
My best friend was killed over this matter. There's a chap here, about 10 minutes away from here, driving. He has been running his car on water since 1986 with the government's permission, provided that he keeps his mouth shut. And with regular intervals, using his own words, they keep warning him to keep his mouth shut.
About 10 days after 9/11, I went through the Pentagon and I saw Secretary Rumsfeld and Deputy Secretary Wolfowitz. I went downstairs just to say hello to some of the people on the Joint Staff who had used to work for me, and one of the generals called me in. He said, "Sir, you got to come in. You got to come in and talk to me a second." I said, "Well, you're too busy." He said, "No." He says, "We've made the decision. We're going to war with Iraq." This was on or about the 20th of September. I said, "We're going to war with Iraq. Why?" He said, "I don't know." He said, "I guess they don't know what else to do." So I said, "Well, did they find some information connecting Saddam to Al-Qaeda?" He said, No. He says, "There's nothing new that way. They just made the decision to go to war with Iraq." He said, "I guess it's like we don't know what to do about terrorists, but we've got a good military and we can take down governments." And he said, "I guess if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem has to look like a nail." So I came back to see him a few weeks later, and by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, "Are we still going to war with Iraq?" And he said, "Oh, it's worse than that." He said, he reached over on his desk, he picked up a piece of paper, and he said, I just got this down from upstairs, meaning the Secretary of Defense's office today, and he said, "This is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran." The truth is about the Middle East is, had there been no oil there, it would be like Africa. Nobody is threatening to intervene in Africa. The problem is the opposite. We keep asking for people to intervene and stop it. And there's no question that the presence of petroleum throughout the region has sparked great power involvement. Whether that was the specific motivation for the coup or not, I can't tell you, but there's always been this attitude that somehow we could intervene and use.
Howard Dean recently seemed to muse aloud whether you had advanced knowledge of 9/11.
Yeah.
If you invent a better mousetrap, the world may beat a path to your door. If you invent a free energy machine, there'll be a path beat to your door, but you don't want those people there.
One of the pivotal people that I encountered early in my career was Edgar Mitchell, the astronaut.
Edgar J. Mitchell, an Apollo mission astronaut, founded the Noetics Institute in Southern California. The The Institute's charter was supposedly to develop alternative energy systems by attracting inventors from all over the country. Mitchell became extremely interested in De Palma's N machine. He made De Palma a paltry offer to buy out the invention, which De Palma naturally refused.
He said to me that if I ever tried anything on my own in California, I would get my head blown off. So I was scared to death. The CIA operates through various very innocent-looking fronts to find out what people are thinking and what they're inventing. Now, what's more innocent than a benign institute founded on transcendental principles to help New Age inventors bring free energy into the world?
And that situation still exists in the United States today, where a person that really understands what's going on just can't get their idea out because the alternative science and medical fields have been co-opted by the intelligence services.
And he converted this little engine to run on water. This is many, many years ago. And he used it for several years. And somehow the news got out, and one day he got visitors, and he was told to dump the engine or else. 3 weeks later, the man was dead. And the coroner's finding was that he fell off the back of a train. He was drunk. Now, it happened that he didn't drink.
Even Dr. Townsend T. Brown, the electrogravitic research scientist, has on his 16-millimeter film of his lab test, which we've got here, he has guys with the black suits and black hats come into the place. You can see where the legends come from. I mean, these guys come in and they look like, you know, Bad Bart to Black Man. I mean, it's classic, and these things do happen.
There is no progressive science in a world where every scientific idea is evaluated for its military potential.
Power, or energy, control of energy equals power in the new world order that is emerging. If you control the energy, the way we get around, the way we get electricity, the way we have our TVs and video cameras and stuff, if you do the control of the energy, then you've got control of the people.
Prices soaring and fuel protests spreading across the globe, it almost sounds too good to be true. A car that runs on nothing but water. And all kinds of water will do. River, rain or sea, they all make this car mobile. Even tea works. Japanese company Genpax unveiled the eco-friendly vehicle in Osaka. Once water is poured into the car's tank, an energy generator takes hydrogen from the water, releasing electrons that power the car.
The main characteristic of this car is that no external input is needed. The car will continue to run for as long as you have a bottle of water inside for you to add from time to time.
There's a group called the Disclosure Project. They published a book which had 400 expert witnesses ranging from civilian air traffic controllers through military radar operators right up to the chaps that are responsible as to whether or not to launch nuclear missiles. So some very credible, very relied upon people, all saying that yes, there's UFO technology, there's anti-gravity, there's free energy, and it is extraterrestrial in origin, and we've captured spacecraft and reverse engineered it. And these are, you know, very solid, reliable chaps in charge of launching nuclear missiles. So.
Vertigo Mach, your range is 10 miles now, sir. It's coming down through 200,000 feet. 10 miles, 200,000 feet, thank you.
10 miles from vertigo flight, and it's through 200,000 feet.
Copy.
Manager, MCC, we are able to identify a tumbling object.
Copy.
And Mission Manager, MCC, be advised, from our vantage point, we do not see a drogue chute, negative drogue.
Sen görüyor musun?
Gördüm.
Aa, nasıl bir şey bu ya? He?
Felaket.
Abi erken çıktılar. 2:20 geçiyor saat.
Saat belli olmaz ki ya.
Ha? Abi bu manyak bir şey ya. Bunda ışığı ilk defa parlak. Aha. He?
Tabii ya.
Alkan bu ne böyle ya? Abi gidiyor değil mi Alkan?
Gidiyor.
He? Nerede? Denize doğru gidiyor değil mi?
Denize.
Aha şekil değişti. Aa, şekil değişti Salih.
Işıklarını mı kıstı?
Yo, hiçbir şey yapmadı. Aa, baba şekil değiştiriyor. Baba ışık gidiyor bir yana. Bak. Duruyor bu. Yemin duruyor. Baba ışık da öbür tarafa gidiyor. Ciddi söylüyorum, ışık bir tarafa gidiyor. Ana. Ya böyle bir şey yok Alkan. Aa, uzaklaştı bak, fokus oldu. Heh. Baba bak, ışık gidip geliyor. Sence nedir bu Alkan ya? Duruyor ama değil mi daha?
Duruyor.
In April of 1979, cosmonaut Viktor Afanasyev lifted off from Star City to dock with the Soviet Soyuz 6 space station. But while en route, something strange happened. Cosmonaut Afanasyev saw an unidentified object turn toward his craft and begin tailing it through space.
It followed us during half of our orbit. We observed it on the light side, and when we entered the shadow side, it disappeared completely. It was an engineering structure made from some type of metal, approximately 40 meters long with inner holes. The object was narrow here and wider here, and inside there were openings. Some places had projections like small wings. The object stayed very close to us. We photographed it, and our photos showed it to be 23 to 28 meters away.
In addition to photographing the UFO, Afanasyev continually reported back to Mission Control about the craft's size, its shape, and position. When the cosmonaut returned to Earth, he was debriefed, told never to reveal what he knew, and had his cameras and film confiscated. Those photos and his voice transmissions from space have never been released.
One of these people was a NASA photographic expert, and she said that in Building 8 of Johnson Space Center, they regularly airbrushed out images of UFOs from the high-res satellite imagery.
Dr. Story Musgrave is a veteran of 5 American shuttle missions, who has seen and photographed several unidentified flying objects in space. Dr. Musgrave does not believe they are craft from another planet.
On 2 of my missions, and I still don't have an answer, I have seen a snake out there, 6, 7, 8 feet long. It is rubbery because it has internal waves in it, and it follows you for a rather long period of time. The more you fly in space, the more you see an incredible amount of things out there, and that sort of brings to you really a certainty that other living creatures are out there. Some incredibly primitive, more primitive, some just proteins coming together, amino acids, and some just single cellular organisms, and other civilizations have been around for a million years that are doing unimaginable kinds of things.
Cosmonaut Afanasyev believes that the UFO he sighted and photographed in 1979 was evidence of just this kind of distant, superintelligent civilization. Does the United States have similar evidence that they're also hiding?
No, I'm sure they would divulge it. That's what NASA's all about. It's about.
During my flight on Gemini 4 in 1965, I saw an object in space fairly close to our spacecraft that I could not identify. It looked to me like maybe the upper stage of another rocket. I tried to take some pictures of it, but unfortunately the pictures did not come out properly. We never were able to identify what it was, and all of our ground radar tracking data indicated that there shouldn't have been another object anywhere near us at the time.
I've read about this incident you had in 1951, and you said you saw literally hundreds of unidentifiable flying objects.
Yes, they were flying quite high. How high we couldn't tell because we couldn't get anywhere near their altitude. But they were either very large craft way up or smaller crafts still well above what we could get to.
For a day and a half, all of this happened, but then no one wanted to talk about it.
We should go boldly where man has not gone before.
Control Houston, we are using the payload bay cameras right now to hopefully catch a glimpse of the Russian space station Mir as it performs an on-orbit burn. Though it will be difficult to pick Mir out from the stars as they pass behind us, the payload bay cameras are positioned such that they're looking straight back behind the orbiter, where the Mir is flying at about 850 nautical miles behind us.
This scientist believes that man holds the secret of anti-gravity and can produce flying saucers at will. We interviewed him at a private house in Perth.
Well, originally I didn't start to investigate UFO phenomena. I suppose I started studying the physics that led me to this point, 62 to 64, at the United States Air Force Academy as a cadet, in a special government program. As you're aware, the Air Force Academy is outside NORAD in the Colorado Mountains. It's a few miles up the hill from it. And I was trained there with 180 some odd other characters to do research in areas of electrogravitics later. And we were programmed with libraries of information by slides flashed up on a wall at the rate of 200 pages a second. We couldn't even read them, but they were being implanted in our minds subliminally. It was a very classified project, and for the most part of it, while we were being programmed, we weren't aware of what was going on. We had normal classes in physics and calculus and this sort of things, but this stuff was being programmed in so that we had to assimilate it or bring it to our conscious mind over the months and years that followed in dreams and kind of daydream periods during the day when we're awake. But I left the academy in '64. I had a top secret security clearance with the government, and then eventually that lapsed to secret. And I did a bit of time in the reserves, Air Force Reserves, with the Strategic Air Command outside of Fort Worth. And then proceeded to do private research in this electrogravitics, thinking that I had cracked the secret of anti-gravity all by myself, and jumping up and down in my father's labs and mines in Dallas. And one day I was approached by the government and a kind of an emissary from Dr. Edward Teller's office, Dr. James R. Maxfield. And he told me what I'd been doing in my lab, and the details of stuff I hadn't even written down or told anybody. He knew, and he had other people like myself sponsored in this kind of research around the country, and that was the first time that I knew that the U.S. government was actively involved, had been, and was still actively involved in the control of gravity with electricity.
And who did this man represent?
Well, his job, as his job qualification is he's the director of the James R. Maxfield Radiation Research Clinic in Dallas, Texas. The same Maxfield that invented the irradiated thread treatment for cancer of various organs. If you look at his little dossier that's in the Who's Who, You find that he was on the President's National Security Advisory Board, which is really a rather important log in the U.S. intelligence system. Kissinger would have been on the same rank. You find that he was closely affiliated with Dr. Edward Teller, who was the kind of dubbed the father of the hydrogen bomb project in the United States. But he told me that Dr. Teller was the head of anti-gravity research there, had been, I don't know whether he still is, and that he'd worked on a similar project with him. In fact, the letter that you and I viewed earlier from my files from Dr. Maxfield to this government and to Sir John Williams did mention that fact, if you recall.
So what happened to you then?
Well, they suggested that I finish my research in Australia. I wasn't enthralled with the idea, but Dr. Maxfield told me that I would be paid to come down and that I was to call the Australian consulate in San Francisco and ask for Bob Gray and tell him that in these words that I was a member of Maxfield's party. At the same time that I was being approached by Dr. Maxfield's party to come down here and finish my research, I'd been approached already by the FBI and was working for them as an informant. That doesn't mean that you're a trained agent. It just means that you're somewhere in industry where they need someone. They don't have time to get them in there.
Informing on what?
Well, the particular thing I was to inform on was the comings and goings of various people from the White House to my group of companies in Dallas, and also their connection to Israel and the Middle East political situation. And I did my job rather well, just reporting who came and went and various amounts of money and things that I did know that transferred. There were about 700 or 800 of us in the United States that were employed by the FBI in this manner. I didn't take money, I took information in exchange. But at any rate, they came and told me, the FBI did, that I had been compromised by a break-in in one of their agencies in Louisiana or someplace like that, and that I was going to get shot. And which they'd explained to me at the beginning, the risks involved, but I thought they were joking until I went back to the office, the computer division there in Dallas, and was sacked, given 30 minutes to clean up my desk and leave, and by an old friend of mine. And so he accused me of being the head of a big spy ring and all kinds of stuff. And so I left. And in fact, I didn't have my last meeting with the FBI, and I didn't have my last meeting with Dr. Maxfield. I just bundled a few things and the family into a plane and headed for Australia. We did make it, and I was quite glad to, and kept a very low profile for 7 months. But I continued to do my research, and I wrote Dr. Maxfield a letter, and that was perhaps my mistake. I said, look, I've done it. I've figured out the wave equation that we were looking for. And again, in my ignorance, I didn't realize how much work had already been done and gone before me. I was just kind of on the periphery or the edge of this whole development.
That's a device to be able to make things like flying saucers fly, is it?
Yes. Also, it's a device to store energy in the form of motion, like of a small star or a big atom. It's called, this is a long word, an MHD plasma, magnetohydrodynamic plasma, like ball lightning, and it contains itself. But it's a way to turn all sorts of electricity into a high voltage battery. Now, this would have been an immediate solution for the Middle East oil blockade at that time. Now, I wrote the letter in good faith, trying to say, look, we can stop the threat of war in the Middle East by using this as an alternate energy source. It's very portable, it's non-polluting. It had some byproduct radiation problems, but things we could solve. It would be cleaner than fission or fusion. Now, that's when people here in this country, at the Aeronautical Research Labs, politicians started to get a hold of me. ASIO contacted me. Good grief. An ad infinitum chain of intelligence people, including 2 CIA people from the States. And then the FBI eventually started looking for me in this country, and that again was after the intelligence war over there, after Hoover died. And I was unable to finish my research in this country. In fact, I met many dead ends in government departments and research facilities where they told me privately, like Dr. Tom Keeble in the Aeronautical Research Labs. He told me, yes, we know about the flying saucers your countrymen have built, and in England and in Canada. And in fact, we have film records of them here in the RAAF files. I said,
I want to stop you there.
Yeah.
Are you saying, Stan, that there are such things as, let's call them flying saucers, but they are built on Earth?
Yes. That doesn't mean that I rule out the possibility of other flying devices or intelligent beings visiting the planet either from the oceanic bottoms or deeper areas or from other areas in space. But I am positive that we have the technology, I can even name you the companies and people involved, in making high-speed electric aircraft that do look, strange enough, like a saucer.
What sort of proof can one furnish for that?
Oh, good grief. The briefcase I've got down here is full of documented evidence that is not all secret. If you go to the records of the New York Herald Tribune, the newspaper is now defunct. I think it's being stored in the Wisconsin State Historical Society. Look for November 20th, 21st, and 22nd, 1955. There are 3 articles in the series on anti-gravity and the various companies and people involved in the research of the United States, Japan, Europe. The list is like a who's who of nuclear physics. It was written by Ansel E. Talbert, the science and aviation editor for the New York Herald Tribune at that time.
Look, there's time for politics. And, it's time for politics. And, it's an absurd insinuation.
There's a shyness and a reluctance on the part of many witnesses, and understandably so, against reporting, because too many have been ridiculed, and many of our viewers have what they feel is a valid UFO experience and have not reported it. By all means, I would say it is your scientific duty to report this, and with the assurance that your names will not be used without your permission.
Since the beginning of time, some ancient mysteries have never been solved. To take an unforgettable journey where no one has dared to go for thousands of years. Until now.
Without feeding the fires of war, without repeating the mistakes that man has made in extending his writ around this globe of ours. There is no strife, no prejudice, no national conflict in outer space as yet, say the moon. Why choose this as our goal? And they may well ask, why climb the highest mountain?